Okay. All right. You ready?
Yep.
All right. You can start the intro.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Solopreneurs Club, founded by the great San Hong, who's going to be leading today's session. We've been doing these events weekly. I believe this is our fourth in a row. Today's topic is leveraging search in lead generation for solopreneurs. There's going to be a lot of interesting content here, so we hope you follow along. For those of you who are joining us on Clubhouse, you can already see the slides that are up and available for you. There will also be a link, I believe, San, correct me where I'm wrong, that there will be a link available for our viewers elsewhere on Facebook Live, LinkedIn Live, and YouTube Live as well to join. So it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you my friend and a mentor in part, San Hong. San is fantastic. Don't listen to him while he's shaking his head. He deserves all the accolades. San is fantastic. San has a really great skill in simplifying processes, identifying opportunities for efficiencies, and building them. So he helps people in all industries, in all spaces, find ways to get what they're trying to get to in a much more efficient manner. He is a consultant. He is a serial entrepreneur, and he has had tremendous success. I'll let him speak to his successes himself, but I regard him highly, and please follow him on LinkedIn if you don't already follow him there, on Facebook, as well as on Clubhouse. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to San Hong.
Thank you, Melanie. And I just have to hold on, make sure I unmute myself. There we go. Okay. All right. So today, so as Nellie mentioned, we're going to talk about search, both paid and organic for lead generation. It's a tool I've used for 15, 20 years now, and had a fair amount of success throughout that time. And so I've learned a lot through trial and error, spending a lot of my own money, and I'm going to share a lot of those lessons with you, hopefully that you can take away with and start using in your own lead generation processes. So I've learned over the years not to make any assumptions, but so first off, I want to just kind of start with why search. We do lead generation at my consulting company, Drive Phase. Two main tools that we use are search, both paid and organic, as well as paid social, so Facebook ads, primarily Facebook and Instagram ads. And so why search? So the biggest reason why is buyer intent. So with search, you've got people that are searching for a solution. And what's nice about that is you've automatically kind of screened out those that aren't looking for the solution, right? And so it's kind of inbound demand, right? And so on Facebook, as kind of a comparison, people are not on Facebook usually to search for a solution to their problem. They're on Facebook to look at funny cat videos and things like that. And so they're not looking to buy anything. But you've got a lot of information on who they are and what they like. And so you can, if you put the right messaging and the product in front of them, can get them to take notice. But it's just different, right? Because they're not looking for a solution on Facebook. So as a result, search leads tend to be, not always so, but tend to be of higher quality, because if you've done a good job of providing the solution they're looking for, they're going to be a little bit stickier from a lead standpoint, right? And so that's really the value of search. So again, not to make any assumptions, and unfortunately these graphics came out a little bit small, but on this next slide, paid versus organic. So if you're not familiar, so paid on Google, I'm using Google primarily. Bing, I do use Bing, and actually sometimes Bing, it can be more successful for me than Google, but primarily most of the volume is on Google, which should be not a surprise to anyone on this call. But so the paid listings are above the organic, by design by Google. They used to say ad, but I think I just checked today, they actually say sponsored. So the first 3 to 4, when you search for something on Google, will say sponsored. Those are paid, meaning that anytime you click on those, someone is paid, someone will pay a fee every time you click on those. Organic is below the paid. And so anything that doesn't say sponsored will be organic. So what's the difference between the two? So paid, the value of paid is it's fast. You can, if I were to start a campaign today, it would typically take a few hours to get the ads approved, but we could be at the top of a page by this afternoon, or within 3 to 4 hours, right? Now, the other thing about paid is it can get expensive because every time someone clicks, you're paying a cost per click. And Google has gotten expensive over the years, and so that can get expensive. I mean, there are some keywords that are 20, 30, 40, 50, or even more. And so that can get expensive if you're paying every time someone clicks on that ad, right? With organic, it's slow. So, typically it's going to take at least 3 to 4 months to start ranking on page 1. It could take as much as 6 to 12 months or more, right? And so that can take a long time. So it can also be expensive because there's a lot of work that goes into kind of rankings, organically. And so the process of getting your site to rank at the top of page 1 organically is called SEO, or search engine optimization. So that I'll talk a little bit about what that process entails, but that is a lot of work and can be expensive, either in time if you're doing it yourself, or in money if you're hiring someone else to do it. But the beauty of organic is once you start ranking, unless Google changes their algorithm, which it did recently, and I took a hit for it, but you're building up what I consider an asset, because once you rank on page 1, you're not paying every time someone clicks on it. You paid to get there, but you're not paying every time someone clicks on it. And so it is an asset that can reap huge dividends over and over again. So that's kind of the differences between the two. And so what should you use? Generally speaking, I would say that I like to start with paid because it's so fast, right? I don't have to wait 6 to 12 months to get to page 1. I can be there by this afternoon. And what I can do with paid is I can learn what keywords convert. What you don't want to do is, a lot of people, because it's free, will start with organic, and you don't know what converts, and you wait 6 to 12 months. And then what you don't want to do is in 6 to 12 months find out the keywords you targeted aren't actually converting into sales or leads, right? So with paid, you can find out immediately what converts, and then you can use those keywords to then kind of switch your efforts towards SEO. The other thing I like to do is, if you do any Facebook advertising, Facebook just kind of requires the pixel, which is the tracking analytics code that Facebook has. If you teach it who you're looking for, it's great at finding more people. Well, what better way to teach it than to kind of share with it who's actually searching for your product? So if you install your Facebook pixel, even if you're not advertising on Facebook right away, you can teach the Facebook pixel who wants your product. And if you ever do start doing Facebook ads, you can kind of accelerate that process because you've already taught the pixel who it's looking for. So again, this is just my opinion, but I like to start with paid, figure out what converts, then switch over to organic. So what do I need to be successful in search? I cannot stress this enough. Being successful on search requires a keyword strategy. I'm going to walk you through how to get that keyword strategy, but a keyword strategy is absolutely critical to being successful. It's not about technique and how obviously these other things do affect it. So your ads and things like that do matter. But if you've got kind of a suspect keyword strategy that underlines everything else you do, it's going to be very difficult to succeed. So what do I mean by keyword strategy? So really, it just means, okay, what keywords do I want to target? But there's a strategy behind how to pick those correct keywords. And so to do that, I shared, and I'm not sure if I created this term or not. I started using it. I never saw it before. When I looked it up, other people were using it. So I don't know who created it. But I'll take credit for today. But it's, you're looking for what's called a Goldilocks niche, right? You're looking for something that's not too hot, not too cold, right? So with the Goldilocks niche, you've got kind of a couple options. So
Stan,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry to interrupt, Stan. I think you mean to be sharing slides here. If
Oh,
you could share a slide.
sugar. That sucks. Yes, I did mean to
Okay.
do.
Okay,
Can you
there
see
you
them
go.
now?
It's starting to screen share, and I'll tell you when it's live. Here we go.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yep.
This is really the only slide that has any graphics to it, so you did not miss anything before then. But thank you, Nelly, for calling it out. Okay, so with the Goldilocks niche, you've got a couple options, right? So one is kind of this really narrow, really specific niche, right? And so what's nice about that is with these really narrow, specific niches, there's usually not a lot of competition, which is a good thing. It's really specific, which is also really a good thing, because people in this niche really have a very specific problem, and when you put that solution in front of them, it really resonates with them because it's so specific. The issue usually with these types of niches is that they're really small. And if you're trying to make money off them, that can be a challenge, right? Because you just don't have a market big enough unless you just have like a $5 billion product, right? So that's where, a really narrow niche can make sense. The opposite of that is kind of the broad niche, right? Where you've got not a specific problem. It's one of those problems that everyone has, right? But usually when it's such a big market, it tends to attract a lot of competition, right? The good news is that it's a huge market, but the problem with this is when it's a really broad market, it's hard to get the messaging, get the product to the point where it really resonates with the audience, right? And so the Goldilocks niche is somewhere in between, where you've got a relatively specific problem or a solution that you're offering. It's small enough that it hasn't really attracted a lot of competition, but it's big enough where you can do some damage and there's some profit to be made off of that, right? And so the reason why I love search when I'm looking for a Goldilocks niche is because I've got the tools to figure out and identify niches that have a lot of potential before I lift a finger, and so because there's so much data on there, on these keywords, that I can do all this research and then really de-risk my money by finding niches ahead of time that have a lot of potential, right? It doesn't mean 100% they're going to be successful, but I can really screen out ones I know won't be successful, right? So some of the tools, I'm gonna do a quick demo on one of these, but some of the tools I like to use. So Google Ads Keyword Planner, so that's free, and so you can use the Keyword Planner tool. SEMrush is the one I'm going to show today to share why. SpyFu is another one I've used where it actually can share what keywords your competitors are targeting, which can be helpful. So let me just do a quick, let's see, give me 1 second here. Let me just do a quick screen share, and I've got a bunch of windows. Give me 1 second. And Nelly, what are you seeing right now? Are you seeing SEMrush, or are you still seeing my slides?
We're seeing SEMrush.
Okay, perfect. All right, perfect. Okay, so SEMrush is a paid tool. I'll show you why I do like it though. You can certainly use Google Ads Manager, which I'll share in a second. But I go to the Keyword Magic tool, right? And so again, we're looking for potential Goldilocks niches. And again, this could be a physical product, it could be a service, it could be whatever you want, right? And so I'm going to just use the example of my dropshipping site, so paint by number. So I'm going to use that. Okay, so it's going to give me a whole bunch of options here. It's going to take a second. Okay, so if I put in paint by number, I'm going to, now the only caveat here is actually it's become much more competitive than when I started my site. But I'll walk you through the process at least, so you can get an idea of. So if I put in paint by number, the beauty of it, it gives me a whole bunch of recommendations kind of in that same niche, right? Which is awesome. Now, what SEMrush can do is it can do a couple things. So it can do, it classifies it based on intent. So the thing you have to be aware of is when people go on search, sometimes they're just kind of doing research and they're not looking for a specific problem. They're kind of in the early stages of the process. And so they're just trying to get some background research. They don't know anything about what they're trying to buy. So they're just trying to, figure out reviews. They're trying to, figure stuff out. Generally speaking, though, the more specific the search, the more, the higher what we call buyer intent that person has, right? So ideally, what you want to do, especially early on, right? If you're just starting out, what I kind of feel is you don't necessarily have the big budget to go after people that are just doing research, right? To get them too early in the research, kind of buying process, right? So you want to convert as quickly and as inexpensively as possible. So what I typically do is I'll kind of limit this to commercial and transactional intent, right? And I'll kind of leave out the informational and navigational, right? And so if I hit apply, then it narrows down the keywords to ones that have commercial or transactional intent. The other thing we do is you can narrow it down by keyword difficulty. So that KD percentage is keyword difficulty. So I typically like to stay below 50%. So you can then, I think you could pick a couple. I can't remember if you can do a couple. If not, all right, no, actually, you know what? I think if you do possible, then it'll do everything that and below, if I remember correctly. Yeah, okay. So it just does it in the range, which is fine for this. So then you can, again, we're looking for this Goldilocks niche where, it's, if we go back to kind of the definition of it, it's, decent size, right? So we can tell by the volume how big the size is, and that's relative, right? If you're just starting out, 1900 is probably fine. If you're looking to grow, 1900 is not significant enough. But early on, 1900 is not a bad size kind of niche to go after. You're going after something really specific. And so this commercial intent, transactional intent is kind of a way to narrow that down, because usually what happens is the closer that someone is to buying, the more specific their searches are, and therefore the more specific solution that they're looking for. So if you look at this is actually kind of exactly what happened with me, is paint by number. People that are looking for these custom kits, there's a little bit less competition. It's more specific. This is going to convert at a higher rate because they're closer to buying, because they're looking for something very specific, right? And so you can start to kind of narrow down and build out, and so this would be kind of an initial keyword list that you would create. And again, that keyword list essentially is your keyword strategy. So, that's kind of one way to do it. And so let me just show you real quick, using the Google Ads keyword planner tool. Just get into this real quick. And manager account. So let me just go into one real quick. And
doing that, I just want to welcome Clubhouse and LinkedIn. Thank you very much. Feel free to drop in some questions, and we'll ensure that someone addresses those before the end of the hour. Thanks.
Sounds good. And let me just hop into one of these accounts real quick. So you can sign up for a Google Ads account. It is free. It is going to try and make you create a campaign. You can create it and just pause it. Just make sure you just pause the campaigns if you're not, ready to get started, which you probably won't be. So if you go into, I'm going into account, your account will look very different. I've got what's called a manager account. So I've got kind of multiple clients that managing in here. But if you once you go into that account and go under tools and settings, and it is slow, and under keyword planner, Sorry for the slowness. This is Google's fault, not mine. So you can do discover new keywords, and it's going to be very similar to what I shared with you before. So I'm going to use the same one, paint by number, and I'm going to hit get results. Now, the one thing I do like about Google Keyword Planner is if you've got a localized product, you can actually narrow that and actually just click get results, and you'll see. I know the size of the volume varies just a little bit. It'll probably be similar, but it may vary a bit from.
Stan, your audio is sticking.
Is it?
Yeah.
How's it now? Is it better now?
Better.
Okay. Okay. So, all right. So if I put in paint by number, so actually the volume is higher on here. So you can see what it does is it gives me a volume, it gives me a competition, and it does give me a cost per click, which I'm going to walk through what to do with that in a second. But again, it gives me a lot of the same data. So, and again, this is a free tool. SEMrush is paid. What I typically do is I generate a list, and then I'll download it to Excel, and then I'll just kind of screen out manually. If I'm not using SEMrush, I'll just kind of highlight the ones I think have kind of high buying intent, and then I'll create that list, and that'll be my initial target list. And again, that's my keyword strategy is that target list of keywords that I'm using. All right, so now, as you're evaluating that list, as you go through the key terms that you get, here's kind of the quick checklist as far as what are you looking for. So number one is, do the keywords reflect buyer intent? That's kind of a common sense thing, right? You've got to kind of put yourself in the user, and you can kind of, unless you're using SEMrush, if you're using Google Ads Keyword Planner, you do have to kind of just you do have to kind of use some common sense as to, okay, is this reflective of someone that's actually ready to buy? Second one is, do they have enough volume? And again, that's relative. Early on, you may not need 500 to 1,000 searches per month might be enough to get you started. But then once, as you're growing, you may have to go after kind of bigger and bigger or larger and larger volume. Are they relatively uncompetitive? And again, Google Ads Planner has kind of a measurement of that. And then SEMrush has a measurement of that as well. The other one is, will they be profitable, right? And so let me walk you through that real quick as well, because I think this one's really kind of, I've got this spreadsheet, and Nellie, can you see the Excel spreadsheet?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So, all right, so it's really simple. So you can recreate this if you have any like second grade level Excel skills. So first one is, what price are you charging for the product? So for my pay by numbers kits, we'll use 50. How much does that cost me? So let's say $25, right? So so basically that's your gross margin. And so for instance, if you're looking at a keyword and the cost per click that's estimated is 50 cents, and that's on, if you go back to SEMrush, there's a column for cost CPC or cost per click. So if I plug in 50 cents here, and then I use a conversion rate that I'm typically going after is 2%. So meaning for every 100 clicks, I'm going to turn 2% of those, or 2 of them, into either a lead or a sale, right? Depending on what I'm trying to go after. And so that means if you basically take 50 cents per click, 2% conversion rate, that means it's going to cost me $25 to acquire a customer. If I'm making $25 and it costs me $25 to get that customer, basically I'm breaking even, right? And so actually that kind of speaks to, when I go after, drop shipping sites, I'm going after kind of higher ticket items. So I've got more profit, more meat on the bone, so I can do paid search, right? But I mean, again, that doesn't really help if that cost per click is now $10, then 2% of that, I forget, is so 2 times 50. So I think that's going to be $500 a sale if my math is correct, right? And so it's really important, that checklist item, that last one, will they be profitable for you? That should not be overlooked, right? So usually if that doesn't check off for me, then I'll move on from either that keyword or even that category or that product, or I won't even sell that product, right? So that's why that's really important to go through and decide, okay, is this worth it? So once I've got that keyword strategy set up, if I'm doing paid, and we don't have enough time for me to go in depth, but I want to just give you the high level of what it's then going to take to be successful doing a paid campaign. I also find that this is where a lot of people fall short when they set up their paid campaigns. And my dog just licked my leg, so apologize for that. Threw me off. So what'd you say?
I'm just laughing. That's all. This is real life. This is what happens live.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I'm giving real-time commentary as well. So once you've got your keyword strategy, then what happens next is really important as well, right? The keyword strategy is probably the most important thing, but the rest of this is also important as well. Is once you've got keywords that you really feel good about, then the next thing is if you Google something and you see the paid listings, they have an ad. So they have a couple, it's usually 2 to 3 bolded items and then a little bit of text underneath that. So that's your Google ad, right? And then from the Google ad, someone's gonna click and you're gonna send them to a page. So the mistake I see a lot of people make is they have a generic ad that they use for all your keywords, and then they send them to your homepage, right? That's the worst thing you could do. So what you want to do is, typically what I do is I tell you I download all my keywords. So I'll group them into kind of themes, thematically group them, and then I'll separate those themes into different what we call ad groups. And so with each ad group, I'll have a different ad. And so I group them so that they're all kind of similar types of topics that someone's searching for, so that the ad I show them is relevant to that specific list of terms that someone searched for, right? And then from that grouping, I'll create a specific landing page that's specific to those key terms, right? So if it's custom paint by numbers, I'm not going to send them to my homepage, which has all sorts of paint by numbers. I'm going to send them to a page that's specific to custom paint by numbers, right? And so, to its extreme, I'm not saying that you set it up this way, but to its extreme, you would have almost one keyword, one ad, and one landing page, right? Typically, that's not in reality. That's not really what happens, but that's the level of, that's how you're going to be successful, because really what you want someone to say is, I'm searching for a solution. I'm having a hard time finding a solution. I see an ad. The ad says, oh, this is what I've been looking for. And then reinforced by the fact that when I get taken to that landing page reinforces, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I'm looking for. That's how you're going to have a high conversion rate. So I have 2% in there, but if you do this right, you can have a much higher than 2% conversion rate. I've had campaigns as high as 30%. It's probably 40 or 50%. That's not typical. And, that's usually I'm in the 2 to 10% range. But if you do this kind of correctly, where you have the right keywords going to the right text, ad text going to the right landing page, that's how you can really have, really do well on paid search. I'm going to cover high level SEO. We don't have nearly enough time to cover all the elements, but I'm going to give you kind of all the things to look for, where you can either learn them yourself, or at least have an understanding, so that if you hire someone, you can get a sense of, does this person know what they're talking about, right? And so again, SEO stands for search engine optimization, and search engine optimization is kind of the art of getting your site ranked highly for specific keywords organically. So what's just below the paid ads. And so there's 2 primary elements of SEO. And let me just clarify, because there are 2 types of SEO. And One is kind of local SEO. And so a local SEO is kind of a brick and mortar business. So I used to have an insurance agency. So with an insurance agency, you typically target someone kind of within a specific radius around my office, which in my case was, or a retail store, or any type of restaurant, something like that. They're going to target a specific area. That is treated Google treats that a little bit differently than for my e-commerce site where I'm targeting national, right? And so what I'm going to go through is national SEO. A lot of the elements of local SEO are similar, but there are some other elements that come into play that don't necessarily come into play for national SEO. So I just want to make that distinction really quick. And again, that's why we don't have enough time to do a full SEO class, because it gets very complicated very quickly. So for SEO, and actually one thing that I want to mention on here that I didn't, and I should, because it's an important piece. Going back to your keyword strategy, you're going to do the same thing for paid search versus SEO. With SEO though, it becomes tricky because once you have your keyword list, you have to realize that you can only optimize each page for one or two, maybe 3 of those keywords max, right? And so what that means is if you got a huge keyword list, then in order to effectively optimize organically for those, you have to have a lot of pages for that. That's why a lot of people build blogs, is so that they can go after all these keywords within that keyword list that you generate, right? Because you can't just, everyone wants to just optimize their homepage for all the words in a keyword list, and that's the wrong thing to do. And so again, you want to split that keyword list up into small groupings, but in this case, you only want to group them up into 2 or 3 words. And then you want to then figure out on your current website, do you have pages on your site that kind of work for those keywords? If not, then you have to create pages. And whether that's a blog page or some other content page, you have to create those pages in order to target those keywords. Then from there, you want to make sure that what you call your H1 tag. So most people don't do HTML anymore, but H1 tags is kind of like the most prominent, biggest text on that page. You just have to make sure, like most of the content management systems like a Square or WordPress or a Wix, you can kind of go into that text and indicate that this is the H1 header. So you want to make sure that within that H1 tag, you've got those keywords in there. There's also metadata or meta tags in there. So you want to have it in there. And then the content on it itself, you want to have the keywords in there. But you also want to be careful 2 things. Number one, that it's natural. And number 2, you don't do what's called keyword stuffing, where it's not like paint by number, paint by number, paint by number, paint by number. They're great, right? Like that's not gonna rank well. And in fact, Google's gonna be like, well, one, this is unreadable. So kind of the rule of thumb is you want to write your content for the human, and then once you write it for the human, go back and tweak it for the search engine. And so you just want to sprinkle a little bit of your keywords within the content. You want to make sure your H1 header has it in there, and then kind of just go back and tweak it. The other piece of SEO that's been hugely important is what's called backlinking. And so this is another website linking to your website, and in particular, a specific page. So there's kind of 2 and let me take a step back and how Google works. So Google works by using what we call web crawlers to basically go through, find all the content on the internet and figure out how to rank them. And basically a web crawler is code that's actually navigating the webs, all the websites on the internet. And it's doing that by navigating through the links, the hyperlinks on your page, right? And so that's why it's so important, because that's how Google discovers new content, is through these hyperlinks. So, so there's kind of two big areas that are important for the backlinking. So one is the anchor text. So if I'm trying to rank for paint by number, or let's say custom paint by number, and there's another relevant site that there's another piece of it, but I'll get to that in a second, that has content on that page, that has a hyperlink that's custom paint by number, that links to the page that I'm trying to rank for custom paint by number, that's a +1 in Google's eyes, right? The second piece of that is the quality of that backlink, right? And so there's a system that might be SEMrush, I can't, or Moz, I think Moz actually created, which is called domain authority. It's not exactly because it's not from Google, but it's the best guess at what Google sees as a high quality site. So a high quality site is going to be like, you know, Google's considered a high domain authority. Facebook is considered a high domain authority. Amazon's considered a high domain authority. So it gets a lot of traffic. It gets a lot of activity. It gets a lot of engagement. And so that's going to be considered a high quality backlink. And so if you have a lot of high quality backlinks with the right anchor text linking to the pages that you want, that is a signal to Google that this site or this page is going to help the algorithm say, okay, this page is about this, and it's a high quality page. And so that's going to be kind of what those are kind of all the factors, the big factors. I mean, there's more than that. There's going to be, how fast is your site and things like that. But these are some of the big factors that affect your organic ranking. So with that, that is all I have from a content perspective. So let me, no, I don't know if you see any questions. If not, I'm going to pull up the restream. But let me pull up and see if we have any questions. If we have anyone on Clubhouse or what you call it? Oh, so we do have a question here. Okay, so Nelly, I do have a question from a LinkedIn user. The question is, how do you fit brand/mission value proposition into this process of keyword research? Which comes first, brand development or keyword research, since it folds into on-page SEO strategy? That's a great question. And there is no one answer to that. So like any good answer, it depends. And it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So what I would tell you is, I have had successful e-commerce websites that I've never even, if I'm being honest with you, have not worried about brand, mission, or value proposition at all. I've completely looked at it through the lens of keyword research, and they've been successful, right? And so could I have scaled it up even further if I built a brand around it? Absolutely. But that really, I was generating a passive income stream, and so it wasn't my primary concern. Where brand and mission and value proposition come in is it helps you build a scalable business because you're building something unique. And so that's where I think that comes in. So you could start with a brand and mission, confirm it with keyword strategy, and then go from there. There are some products where keyword strategy does not work, right? Because two reasons. Number one is no one is searching for that product because they don't know about it. And that's where brand mission and value proposition are going to be hugely important. And that's where you're going to use other marketing channels. Two is there's not an easy way to differentiate your solution from others based on how people are searching. And I don't have a good example of this, but it's just, if they, based on keywords, there could be multiple types of solutions that fit that. And so there's no good way to differentiate your solution from another. And so again, that's where kind of value proposition may make sense. I usually start with keyword strategy when I'm developing a passive income stream where my primary goal is to make money and I'm not trying to build it into a multi-million-dollar business. If I were trying to build a multi-million-dollar business, I would probably start with my value proposition and brand and mission first. I would check the keyword volume to confirm some things, and maybe it helps me get jump started. But if I don't see the keywords, it wouldn't necessarily keep me from starting. It just would be just another data point. I don't know if that answers that question or not. But I don't know if that helps. Does that make sense, Melanie?
That makes sense here. I'm wondering if maybe I can ask a question that gives you the opportunity to elaborate on your answer here.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Zen, could you pull up your Goldilocks slide, the one with the diagram?
Yes.
Here. Okay. So could you possibly provide some detail illustrating in what circumstances, in what situations would someone consider the left or the middle or the right here? Like to whom, to whom or in which industry or in which life cycle, journey, phase, etc. Where would they really want to focus? And then specifically,
Sure.
how would that come into play? Yep.
So let's start with the middle, right? So usually someone that kind of goes after this broad market and with kind of more generalized needs, that's going to be typically someone with a huge budget. Actually, both the ones to the left of this, I would say probably tend to be someone with a huge budget. But actually, the first one might be there might be some exceptions to that. So the example that comes to mind is like a Procter and Gamble, which if you go to a grocery shelf sells pretty much 95% of the products on most of those grocery shelves, right? Is going to be your consumer type products, and even then they kind of break the market up a little bit, but their universe of products is going to target pretty much everyone, right? So laundry detergent, everyone freaking needs laundry. Well, pretty much everyone should need laundry detergent, but and so that's a really broad market. Mom and pop trying to start that's going to be really hard to target that entire market, that entire universe. They would want to target something kind of a very tiny subset or a very specific need within that niche. The one to the left, where it's a really tiny market but very specific, that's going to be someone with just a huge really expensive products, right? So that's going to be like a defense contractor where they've got like 6 customers in the whole world, right? Like, the US and like, a few other countries, but they're selling multi hundreds of millions of dollar products. So they don't need a massive market to do that. Or it's a mom and pop where they're not trying to, they're trying to make just a little bit of money. And so they don't need a huge market to be successful or accomplish their goals. The majority of people probably want to be in that Goldilocks niche. And again, Goldilocks is relative in this case, right? Not everyone's hot is going to be, hot for one person is not going to be hot for everyone. And so really your Goldilocks niche is going to be dependent on what your goals are, what your budget is, what kind of product you're selling, how much of a profit you have per product. So all these pieces are going to fit into that equation. I don't know. You have anything to add to that, Melanie? I mean, you might have been looking for a specific answer that I didn't. hit.
No, this is helpful. Well, so I'm thinking about the solopreneur audience.
Okay.
And so potentially we can think about lifestyle types of businesses versus businesses that are built to or hoping to scale tremendously.
Right.
So would
Fair
you
enough.
say that the left is more for a lifestyle type of an entrepreneur versus the right being one looking to scale, or is that an incorrect way of thinking about this?
Again, it's all relative, right? So what I would say is, I would say for the solopreneur, I can't really think of a good scenario where they should go after this middle one, right? So really for a solopreneur, it's really kind of how narrow do you want to go when it comes down to it. And I mean, being candid, there's nothing wrong with starting to go really, really specific to start. And in fact, that's probably recommended because that's probably the easiest way to get a sale, right? And there's nothing like breaking the seal. Like there's nothing more frustrating than not getting a sale. And usually when you're having trouble getting a sale, it's because your solution doesn't resonate. But again, if you're solving a problem no one else really cares about because the market's so small, it's just not worth it for them. A solopreneur, that might be worth it to a solopreneur. And they can maybe start to get some momentum by going after a really, really narrow niche. If as your revenue goals grow, that usually this narrow niche becomes unsustainable, right? And so you can either find additional really narrow niches, or you just kind of start to gradually broaden that into something more like this. So it really just depends, but it's hard to give a really specific answer, Nelly, because it's all relative, right? It really comes down to what are your goals, what are you trying to accomplish, what are you selling, what's your budget, and then it's kind of all those factors. It's not even like a checklist, right? It's like cooking a little bit, right? Like you've got your recipe, but you're tweaking it just based on a number of things, and there's no right answer. One thing that works in one niche might not work in another, right? So it's really just it's really a little bit of experimentation at that point.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for answering the question, San. I totally appreciate that the answer is it depends, and that there's so many different factors. And this is the beauty of the consulting that you offer, to be able to talk people through the specifics if that's what they're interested in doing. But I think what you just painted right now is really helpful guidelines for someone who's trying to get started. So thank you for that illustration.
Yeah, I'd rather, if you've got, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 searches a month, which relatively is relatively small. But if you're just getting started, if you can get 5 or 10 sales out of that, right? Because no one else is selling a solution for that, that's fantastic, right? Especially if you're a solopreneur just starting out, right? But again, I'm guessing at some point that's not going to be enough, and so you've got to broaden that some way, in more into this.
And just for a point of clarification, I just realized this. When you're saying, when you're speaking to specificity here, you're speaking about the specificity of the keywords as opposed to the specificity of the product or good or service being sold? Or is it both?
It's really both. It could be, let's just use the service example, because I think there's a lot of solopreneurs that are providing a service rather than a product. Yeah. So let's use accounting, because that just came to mind, right? And so you could have it's the product and the solution. So let's just say you're an accountant that works with a lot of tech startups, right? Mm-hmm. There's probably some specific skills that there's things that you understand as someone that works with a lot of other tech startups that maybe a general accountant might not know. So for instance, I know there's research and development credits that are available to tech startups, right? And so that is a more specific need that you're filling, right? But my guess is there's going to be, I don't know what the volume is, but there's probably people that are looking for accountants that understand the needs of tech startups. When I had an insurance agency, I know it was with I always am reticent to say the company because they're so litigious and so protective of their brand. So, but it was a big company, and so all the other agents were always like, "Oh, I have to get an accountant that serves just these types of insurance agents," which I'll be honest, I think is ridiculous. But there, for whatever reason, there are some agents that felt like they needed to go with an accountant that just worked with other agents that work for this company, right? And so that's a really specific service. But my guess is the keywords probably are more specific in that case as well. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Thank you. I find this
it's
to be really
both.
interesting.
So it's really both. Say that again.
Yeah, I said I find this to be a really interesting way to look at it. So this is, really interesting, but I didn't want to hold you up on just one side. So if there are other points that you'd like to make that you think would be nice takeaways, like if you could give us a few takeaways for someone who's starting out or maybe a little bit in the beginner or beginner intermediate phase, what should their takeaways be?
So I would say, I would say this, right? So like anything else, just go do it, right? Like you might not be successful the first time around. But the beauty of this is you can test things out and not go broke doing it. Although with Google Ads, you can do a daily budget, but I've spent money very quickly in Google Ads because fixing it is expensive. But I cannot stress enough that it comes down to the keyword strategy, right? Like if you go and do your keyword research, it's an acquired skill, right? But you can't get that skill if you don't try it out. So number one is just go try it. Number two is this checklist I think is really important as well, because you want to have as you vet out your keyword list, you want to make sure that as many of those keywords check off all four as possible if they can, right? Now sometimes you can't get all four, especially if you diving into a less competitive, a more competitive niche, and candidly it's getting harder and harder to find uncompetitive niches. I think that's the unfortunate, but that doesn't mean they don't happen. The other thing I would tell you is there's a term called long tail keywords, and that's relevant here. And long tail keywords are typically keywords that have more than 3 words in them, right? And so usually what happens is, and that for a beginner, this is probably the better approach to take, is long-tail keywords are really specific, right? So let's just use jackets as an example, right? So you could target jackets, right? But that's not going to be someone that has high buyer intent. You're going to have massive volume, right? It's going to be really competitive, and as a result, it's not going to be profitable. But if you do that keyword magic tool, you may find out that there's people searching for small red leather frilly jackets, right? So I'm trying to get something ridiculous to prove a point. So that's a long tail keyword, right? And so my guess is that has pretty small volume. But if you could piece together a bunch of those long tail keywords that are uncompetitive, relatively high buyer intent, right? Because if someone's searching for a red, leather frill jacket, they're pretty sure they want to buy. So they've got something very specific in mind that they're trying to buy, which means they're close to buying, right? And so if you can piece together a bunch of these kind of long tail keywords that maybe don't have a lot of volume, it's more work on your part, but you increase your odds of being, your chances of being successful pretty significantly, right? So, but again, it's just a way to get started. It's a way to take a small budget and get some traction. Again, that's not what you want to do long term, but it's a way to kind of get started. But those long tail keywords, both on the paid side and on the organic side, are going to be gold, right? Because on the organic side, it's the competition is true as well, right? It's much harder to rank for words that are competitive than it is to rank for words that are uncompetitive. So,
San, can you speak to the fourth bullet here? I know you had pulled up your Excel sheet earlier, but
yeah,
if I were just starting out and I'm trying to hit these 4 bullets, the fourth bullet might be where I'm wondering, well, is this kind of a shot in the dark before I get started? So what's some sort of reasoning to apply to coming up with that?
okay, so fair statement. And probably a better word that I should have here is can they be profitable versus will they be profitable?
Okay.
So I'll change that after this call. But so the point of going through that is if your clicks are $10 a click
Mm-hmm.
and you're selling an $11 product, it doesn't even make sense to go further, right?
It's simply looking at that delta.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Just look at
So
that delta alone.
you're looking at, is this realistic to be profitable? And it, if it is, then okay, let me move it on to the next phase. But if again, I used to be in insurance, right? And so if you know insurance, like your insurance agents aren't making that much per sale, but it's in the long term. But insurance key terms are amongst the most expensive key terms on Google, right? And so the majority of key terms in insurance, I wouldn't touch because there's zero chance I'm gonna make a profit off of that, right? So it's really more. I would say that this last bullet point is a way to screen out a key term rather than to screen in a key term. Does that make sense? Like this is like, oh crap, like in no world is this even worth it for me to even try. So why even do it, right? So I would say, does that answer your question? I hope that
It does. It does. No, it's just a way of looking at this. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, correct. It's just another way, and it's more just to, again, it's everything here is to de-risk your investment, right? If you're looking for reasons not to target anything, then really to target anything, right? And so again, if the numbers just literally don't make sense in any mathematical world, then why go after it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's an exercise in being reasonable with yourself.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
We want to our good or service we're selling, but let's be reasonable. Like, can I really hit the kind of volume to make this make sense? Or does this even make sense simply by way of that delta that we spoke of?
No, 1,000%. And that's why, honestly, I've started to go after just higher ticket items because, with the low ticket items, it's hard to do paid advertising and still make money. These platforms are getting too competitive. I mean, so, we build no code applications and, our average, project is probably between 5 and 15K, right? So the beauty there is I can do some things there that I wouldn't be able to do with some of the other things that I do, right? I could do some digital marketing with that product and service that I wouldn't be able to do with other things. But, if I'm charging, for the digital marketing, we're doing $500 a month, which isn't insignificant. That one I've got we've got a little bit more meat in the bone just because it is recurring, but I've got other stuff where it's like $100 a month, right? And so I can't do certain things from a marketing perspective that I could do with some of those higher ticket items. So it's why, and on the physical product side, same thing. I've gone after higher ticket items because I just know these candles and things like that. Unless you've got like a social media following or something like that, it's hard to do some of these paid advertising.
Understood. Thank you, San. We are just at the top of the hour. So I want to say thank you to San, whom I trust and respect and admire so much for becoming a sensei of all things digital marketing and no code. So thank you very much, San, for this. I would trust him with any of those things except shopping, because red leather frilly jacket. How would you get leather and frilly together? I don't know. But, but in all other things, go to San for digital marketing, no code. San's email address is san@drivephase.co.
Correct. Yep.
And feel free to reach out to him. Do follow the Solopreneurs Club. Follow San on LinkedIn as well as on Clubhouse. And we'll see you back here next Friday.
And now you are hosting next Friday, and you want to give a quick taste of what you're covering?
It will be along the lines of critical reasoning, critical thinking, and decision making, but exact title to be determined.
Okay. All right. We'll keep us we'll keep the cliffhanger a little bit longer, but we'll post that as soon as she's ready. But thank you, Nellie, for being the awesomest co-host as usual, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, San. Thank you. See you next week. Okay. Thank you
week.
to all of you joining us on Clubhouse. I see a few new people who joined us in the room. Thank you. Sorry that you're missing us, but the replay will be available, and feel free to follow San on LinkedIn to catch the replay there as well. And with that, we're going to close the Clubhouse room. See you soon.
Close
Okay.
it.
Yep.